So if you would all join me, I'm going to go ahead and say a Shehechianu because this is my first time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu, v'kiyamanu, v'kiyanu, la'azman. Amen. So thank you all for being a part of my first time subbing in for Torah study. It really means a lot. I believe you guys all have your own copy, but if you're in the Plout, I'm on page 979. We're in Numbers 13, Parshat Shalach Lecha. So again, that is Numbers chapter 13 through 15. And if you're using the same commentary that I'm using, it starts on page 979. But first, we have our blessing for the study of Torah. Feel free to join me along if you don't know it. It's the same as many of our blessings, and the ending is la'asok b'divrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, God, for giving us the commandment to immerse ourselves. I love the way that this is translated, to immerse ourselves in the study of Torah. Amen. Okay, so again, we're in Numbers chapter 13, Parshat Shalach Lecha. So what's about to happen in this Torah portion, hold on, I'm letting people in, is probably, in my opinion, one of the single greatest collective moments of failure of leadership in the Torah. We have at the very beginning, Moses sends out 12 spies into the land of Canaan. They are like almost there. They are right at the water's edge, ready to go into the land of Israel. And they send off the spies. The spies go out for 40 days and they come back. And 10 of them are like, we absolutely cannot do this. There is no way. We need to go back to Egypt. The complaining starts. The Israelites start crying. And there's only 2 of them who are Caleb and Joshua. Joshua will be the eventual new leader of the Israelites, who are like, no, we can do this. So to me, this is a moment of great failure of leadership. So I'll go ahead. Does someone want to start reading, or should I just go ahead and read for us? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'll read. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. The Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, send emissaries to scout the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelite people. Send one representative from each of their ancestral tribes, each one, and this is important, I think, a chieftain among them. So Moses, by the Eternal's command, sent them out from the wilderness of Paran, all of them being notables, leaders of the Israelites, and these were their names. And then we go on to list these leaders. From the tribe of Reuben, Shammua, son of Zakur. From the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat, son of Hori. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, son of Jephunneh. From the tribe of Issachar, Igal, son of Joseph. From the tribe of Ephraim, Hosea, son of Nun. From the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, son of Raphu. From the tribe of Zebulun, Gadiel, son of Sodi. From the tribe of Joseph, namely the tribe of Menashe, Gadi, son of Susi. From the tribe of Dan, Amiel, son of Gemali. From the tribe of Asher, Satur, son of Michael. From the tribe of Naphtali, Nachbi, son of Bopsi. From the tribe of Gad, Geuel, son of Machi. And here's the big part. Those are the names of the emissaries whom Moses sent to scout the land. But Moses changed the name of Hosea, son of Nun, to Joshua. So that's the opening. Why do you think this part is so important? And maybe you caught it in that first paragraph. Are these ordinary people?
They're all chieftains.
Members? They're all chieftains. These are like Moses sends out SEAL Team 6. Like the best of the best of the best of what they have to offer. These aren't the ordinary citizens. These aren't the people who have been complaining all the time. These are like his people. And I think it's important that our Torah portion wants us to recognize that these are the leaders. These are the best of the best of the best. And the other thing that's interesting, and you probably remember from other times that you've studied Torah, but whenever we have a name change, that's something to pay attention to. So in verse 16, it says, those are the names of the emissaries whom Moses sent to scout the land. But Moses changed the name of Hosea, son of Nun, to Joshua. And Joshua in Hebrew is Yehoshua. So we add the Yud. Do you guys remember any time in the Torah where there might have been maybe like Avram and Sarai, that they get added a letter to their name, and all of a sudden it's kind of an indication to us as the reader that hey, that Avram changed to Avraham, and that hey, Sarai changed to Sarai was an indication that God was with them. Because in that tetragrammaton, that Yud He Vav He, they had a little piece of God's name with them. And I think the same with Yehoshua, Hosea to Yehoshua, that Yud is our little indicator of like, pay attention to Joshua. This is going to be a very important character. Okay, we continue. We're in verse 17. When Moses sent them to scout the land of Canaan, he said to them, go up there into the Negev and into the hill country and see what kind of country it is. Are the people who dwell in it strong or weak, few or many? Is the country in which they dwell good or bad? Are the towns they live in open or fortified? Is the soil rich or poor? Is it wooded or not? And take pains to bring back some of the fruit of the land. Now it happened to be the season of the first grapes. So the scouts, they went and scouted the land from the wilderness of Zin to Rehob at Lebo Hamath. They went up into the Negev and came to Hebron, where lived Ahiman, Shesai, and Talmai, the Anakites. Now Hebron was founded several years before Zoan of Egypt. They reached the Wadi of Eshcol, and there they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes. It had to be borne on a carrying frame by two of them, meaning it was so big, the fruit was so big that they had to carry it, 2 men, and some pomegranates and figs. That place was named the Wadi of Eshcol because of the cluster that the Israelites cut down there. Okay, so the journey so far, not bad. They're going all over, 40 days. We know there's fruit. Let's see what happens from there. At the end of the 40 days, they returned from scouting the land. They went straight to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran, and they made their report to them and to the whole community as they showed them the fruits of the land. This is what they told them, quote, we came to the land you sent us to. It does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who inhabit the country are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the Anakites there. Amalekites dwell in the Negeb region. Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites inhabit the hill country, and Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. Caleb hushed the people before Moses and said, let us by all means go up, and we shall gain possession of it, and for we shall surely overcome it. But the emissaries who had gone up with him said, we cannot attack that people, for it is stronger than we. Thus they spread calamities among the Israelites about the land they had scouted, saying, quote, the country that we traversed and scouted is one that devours its settlers. All the people that we saw in it are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there, who are supposed to be like ancestors of giants. The Anakites are part of the Nephilim, and we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. The whole community broke into loud cries, and the people wept that night. All the Israelites railed against Moses and Aaron. If only we had died in the land of Egypt, the whole community shouted at them. Or if only we might die in this wilderness. Why is the Eternal taking us to that land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our children will be carried off. It would be better for us to go back to Egypt. And they said to one another, let us head back to Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembled congregation of Israelites. Okay. They're back to their old trope. We should have gone back. Life was so much easier in Egypt. But what happens? They sent out SEAL Team 6 and it just falls apart. Yeah, Panina.
Okay. First of all, we have to pay attention that they picked up one of each tribe. When they went back to look at it, they did find something that showed that those people were actually living there. There were things growing, cultivating. But instead of looking at the tribes that stayed there and made a home that was actually fruitful and habitable, they were looking at the bad things that were happening there. Instead of looking at the positive, they only looked for what was negative. All the other tribes that were living there, that were fighting and killing and whatever, taking over wherever it is that wasn't theirs, or a part that was theirs because it was tribes. It was a culture of tribes. And we were the only tribes in the world. So I think the fact that they looked for the wrong, instead of looking for the good and the strength in the people that still were there and waiting for them, they looked at the ones that were the fighters, the nomads, the whatever you want to call it, that eventually disappeared all over the world. Tribes
they
didn't
only took the
exist.
time
Only
to
if you
focus on
had a connection, right? If you became connected to the land, committed to the land, that's it. That's what happened there.
Yeah, because it's very obvious that the land is fruitful. They take that big cluster of grapes. There is land to be toiled. There is a society that can be made, that clearly other people have been able to make something of this
There
land.
was there. They were already there.
It was there.
The ones
for
who
the
never
taking.
left were never still there.
Yeah. And you're saying that instead they chose to focus on the negative, what wasn't there or who was there. Great.
Well,
Yeah, Eric.
But the thing is, the idea is you go in and you kick all these people out and you confiscate their land and enslave them or throw them somewhere else. Is this
No.
because God told you to do that? That seems a little bit.
That wasn't the idea.
Well,
There was Abraham lived with a neighbor, and it's a known to the whole understanding of the rabbis that Abraham was a very righteous man, and they loved him, and they gave them the cave, and he said, no, I'm going to pay for it. And the same happened with David. The king wanted to give him Jerusalem. He said, no, I'm going to pay for it. They lived very peacefully with their neighbors, and they were willing to share. Nobody said that they took those people's land. They were there. The land was barren when Abraham came there. He had to dig wells the first thing. There was no water available.
This land wasn't barren. It was all populated and cultivated.
Well, this was a very different
Even
land.
today, in today's culture, if you are winning a war that you did not start, the UN, according to the UN, you are allowed to keep it. And that's what happened to Russia when they took over a part of Germany during World War II. Israel was the only one that was always
okay, we're gonna cut off there. We're not gonna go into modern history. We're not gonna go into modern history. But it's a really good question.
It's the same thing. It's connected. It's the same thing.
For right now, the purpose is we're not going to connect it, but I think it's a really good question to ask, that what is the exact instruction? Because the instructions all along have been, God says to Moses, I'm going to take you to this land, you're going to go in it, and you're going to conquer it. You're going to make this land for yourself. It doesn't say you're going to go inside, you're going to kill everybody, you're going to capture them, you're going to take all their land from them.
Exactly.
I think that's a good question. Okay, Merle, we're going to pass it on to you.
But the problem seen by the majority is that these people are militarily powerful and have forts and
that's the perception that they have. They go in and they say, I don't know if we can do this. I don't know if we're so strong. But I think that's an interesting thing, that's where their minds immediately go to. Because isn't this the same group of people that witnessed plagues in Egypt and the crossing of this, the spreading of the sea and the manna from heaven? These were the tribe leaders who had witnessed all those miracles.
Yeah, and the killing of firstborn and so forth. And it's a game with harsh rules, though. I mean,
yeah. But I think it's interesting that at this moment, when they're like just about to taste like all of what they've been working towards, that they get cold feet. Okay, Meryl, I'm going to pass it over to you.
But I think that especially then, I think that anytime there's serious unknown, I mean, you're being given instructions to do something, but you still don't have a clue as to what's going to happen or how it's going to take place. So I think that anytime there's that unknown, negativity comes along with it.
That's right.
I mean, you could walk into this place and it can be the most fertile place in the world with all the food in the world, and you don't have to eat manna and all of that. But you're still going to be negative about, can I have this? Is it touchable? Is it realistic? I mean, imagine these people, they have no clue. They're just being sent somewhere. And I mean, we moved here 47 years ago, and, everybody thought we were moving to an Indian reservation because they didn't know about Phoenix or Scottsdale. We moved here because Arnie took a job. But that's the negativity is always there when you have no clue what's in front of you.
I think the fear of the unknown is a really important factor in this situation.
Right.
Right. They've seen everything that they had. Yeah, I see a hand. David, go ahead.
Seems to me another thing is they continually forget about God and who is guiding, leading, supporting, sustaining them. And so it's something that happens again and again, even throughout the whole wilderness experience and maybe all through history, is that the Israelites are God's people, but they forget that.
And the interesting thing is that they keep forgetting about the presence of God while they are arguably the closest to God that they will ever be. That there's literally manna that falls from heaven. Water comes up out of rocks when they need to drink, right? The hovering of the clouds over the tent of meeting. I mean, they're literally in the presence of God at all moments, and yet they're so quick to forget about it. Really interesting point. Yeah, I see your hand down there, Benjamin. Hi.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you. I had some technical trouble, so this may have been discussed, and my apologies, but sort of building on what Merle said, this is kind of the human condition of these, we have these opportunities, and then should I take it? Should I not take it? Is it the right thing? So we doubt. That's the human condition. And you just mentioned about God's presence and these miracles being around them. It was kind of their normal. So maybe it wasn't so, can I say, godlike, doesn't water happen and such all the time. So the reality may have been a little bit challenged.
Well,
yeah, for sure. And I think that there's, I read something while I was preparing for this that kind of really opened my eyes a little bit. And it was talking about how there's two types of fear, right? There's fear of failure. And I think the automatic that we go to with the Israelites is they had fear that they would fail, right? That they would die, that they wouldn't be able to conquer the land. And this interpretation that I read came from who used to be the Lubavitcher Rebbe, so Menachem Mendel Schneerson, so of like the Hasidic dynasty. He passed away in, I think, 94. And his take was that it wasn't that they were afraid of failure, it's that they were afraid of success, which kind of spinned it on its head for me a little bit. That here they were living in like their little tribe. Presence of God is everywhere. They don't have to worry about food. They don't have to worry about water. God comes down in a tent, tells them when they can walk and when they can't walk. And it's like, they got everything they need, right? I think about, as I read Torah each year, my interpretation of like God as parent has really transformed as I've like become a mother myself and see like my little children going through these like weaning phases of when they want to pull away and when they want to be close. And I almost kind of see this as like a weaning moment for the Israelites, that they have to like be weaned a little bit off of what God has provided for them. And so it's not that they're necessarily afraid that they're going to fail, but if they succeed, it's like, well, are we going to be able to be in God's presence anymore? Do I have to go farm my own food? Do I have to now form a society? And the answer is yes, that they have new responsibilities. And it got me thinking about what are the different times that we hold ourselves back in our lives, not necessarily because we're afraid of failure, but because success looks very different than the comfort of our life in the moment. So I read that and it just kind of opened my eyes a little bit. And there's a part in the text that I want to alert you guys to that I think actually really supports this kind of idea. Go ahead, Cindy. Hi.
I think Pamela was ahead of me.
Oh, sorry, Pamela.
Hi, everybody. So I had like a lot of thoughts come up with everybody's commentary. I think first, I wanted to say, Ben, your comment about living so close to God on a regular basis and finding God in everywhere and everything is a really powerful message for today as well as for then. Because in some ways that's a choice, right? Like we have a choice to see God everywhere or not. So that was one thought I had, and I thought that was a really something for me to mull over. And then when somebody said that like this was a weaning moment, I feel like it's almost like a Garden of Eden story in a way, right? Like this is a second Eden, right? So what happened? So you are now like God, therefore you have agency, you have control, you have your own power. And if you realize how powerful we actually are in terms of creating our own reality, whether that reality is creating a society, and you're doing it like from a blank slate, essentially, right? Like you have some history, but you're sort of, you come with your toolkit, but you have a blank slate to paint on.
Yeah.
And so I think that fear of success is almost like a fear of your own power, a fear of your own agency. And I really, every year when we have studied this, so now this may be my third year with everybody with the group studying a little bit. And I always come back to between the 12 and the 2, fear and courage. And ultimately, like living in your fear, you don't just die of fear, right? But you don't thrive either. You don't. So anyway, those are all of the various things I just wanted to share with everybody.
I love it. I love this idea of this is almost like a repeat of the Garden of Eden type situation. Like they have the food, they have the water, they have God's presence whenever they need it. And here comes the moment where they need to leave it. I love that. Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay, now I understand they were operating under the premise that this is the promised land. God told you to go and conquer it. But I'm kind of thinking about all the people that were living there peacefully. They were working the land. It's almost like when the Europeans came to the United States and said, well, we discovered it, even though there were people already living here. And, you know, what about them just taking over because God told them they could for the people that were already there and peaceful?
Yeah, I mean,
that was my question.
Yeah, this section and what the Haftarah for this Torah portion is, which is from the book of Joshua and Nevi'im, like a lot of people have issues with it. It's story after story after story of Joshua and their army going through and conquering these lands that by all accounts, they're able to farm, they have their tribal, they're all getting along. So I think we're totally supposed to wrestle with this idea of what this promised land really means, which is what I think, Eric, you were bringing to attention, that there's like this uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
Okay, Penina.
I'm going to give you an example. During the division of the country in 1948, when the British were over there, we became a colony of the British Empire. When the UN decided to divide the country, there were sections of the land that were given to the Arabs who lived there, and there was a section that were given to Israel. And that means that the land was divided. Who started the war? We were willing to share. They didn't want to share. The war started the minute the British left and left them all the arms. I lived there and I knew exactly what was happening. We were always willing to share. They don't want to share. Get it through your heads. They don't want to share. You ask any Arab who lives in Israel, they say that we don't. They don't want us there. They're going to throw us to the sea till every Jew is going down to the ocean. They don't want to share, and the world doesn't get it and doesn't want to remember it. Jerusalem was not given to us whole. They fought in 50 something, the 6-Day War. We won that other half because they started a war. If you win it, you want just to give it back. We took out so many people from out of where the Falashi Jews.
I have to interrupt. Penina, didn't the Israelites start the war there? The other people?
No.
They came in and conquered.
No.
Not the 6-Day War. The 6-Day
I'm
War.
talking about
We're talking about two
It's
different.
the same situation. We weren't accepted. They went to the mountains, not to the valleys. They
Okay, we're
settled
not
themselves
yet
in the
to the parts where
mountains,
they go
and
in, so
eventually
let's
they
go
walked
back,
their way
Penina.
down.
Penina,
There was
let's go back
wars
to the
from the
text and see
beginning.
what happens. Let's go back to the text and see what happens. Okay, so we are, for those of you who are in the same text as me, we're on 982 at the bottom, or the start of chapter 14. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembled congregation of Israelites, and Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, of those who had scouted the land, rent their clothes and exhorted the whole Israelite community. The land that we traversed and scouted is an exceedingly good land. If pleased with us, the Eternal will bring us into that land, a land that flows with milk and honey, and give it to us. Only you must not rebel against God. Have no fear then of the people of the country, for they are our prey. Their protection has departed from them, but the Eternal is with us. Have no fear of them. As the whole community threatened to pelt them with stones, the presence of the Eternal appeared in the tent of meeting to all of the Israelites. And the Eternal One said to Moses, how long will this people spurn me? And how long will they have no faith in me despite all the signs that I have performed in their midst? I will strike them with pestilence and disown them, and I will make of you a nation far more numerous than they. But Moses said to the Eternal, when the Egyptians from whose midst you brought up this people in your might hear your news, they will tell it to the inhabitants of that land. Now they have heard that you, Eternal One, are in the midst of this people, that you, Eternal One, appear in plain sight when your cloud rests over them, and when you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and in a pillar of fire by night. If then you slay this people wholesale, the nations who have heard your fame will say, it must be because the Eternal was powerless to bring that people into the land, promised them on oath that God slaughtered them in the wilderness. Therefore, I pray, let my Lord's forbearance be great, as you have declared, saying. So once again, Moses goes back to being the defendant for the Israelite people. They've gone back to their old tropes. We should have died in the desert. Why did you bring us this land? We can't do it. Let's just go back. And Moses steps in because God again is like, I'm over these people. I just want to kill them. They don't appreciate anything of what I've done. And here's where Moses comes in. And what follows is a lot of the liturgy that we actually say on Yom Kippur. A lot of the liturgy that we say in all of the Salach Lanus and the pardon us, forgive us, grant us atonement. And it says the Eternal. So here's Moses kind of coaxing God down from another God, hissy fit, as I like to say. The Eternal, slow to anger and abounding in kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquity of parents upon children, upon the 3rd and 4th generations. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people according to your great kindness, as you have forgiven this people ever since Egypt. And the Eternal One said, I pardon as you have asked. Nevertheless, as I live and as the Eternal's presence fills the whole world, none of the adults who have seen my presence and the signs that I have performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, and who have tried me these so many times have disobeyed me, shall see the land that I promised on oath to their fathers. None of those who spurn me shall see it. But my servant Caleb, because he was imbued with a different spirit and remained loyal, him will I bring into the land that he entered, and his offspring shall hold in it as a possession. Now the Amalekites and the Canaanites occupy the valleys. Start out then tomorrow and march into the wilderness by the Sea of Reeds. So this is where we get that punishment. 40 days the scouts were sent out. 40 years will be their punishment. That anyone who in that census at the beginning of Bamidbar, which was ideally the men who were of 20 years older or older, they will not get to see the promised land. 40 years they're going to have to stand outside and continue to wander the desert. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That they said that, oh, we can't do it. Let's just go back. We're going to die. We're going to die. And sure enough, the ones of the elders are told that your journey ends here. You're going to stay in this wilderness. You're going to stay in the Bamidbar. You don't necessarily have what it takes. You need to change your mentality in order to make it into this new land. And you guys are just so stuck in that slave mentality of, I can't do it. I need someone to do it for me. So it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. They were doomed.
We have a somewhat different situation in which our communication with the Almighty is much more intermittent and foggy than at the time. I mean, here he's just getting, specific words. This is what's going to happen, and so things have changed a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. In 1948, I don't remember. I mean, human affairs are very complicated, but we don't see God getting into them that much these days.
I think that was part of
unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's part of, with Caleb and Joshua being what ended up being the ones that led us into that uncharted territory, that led us into that kind of next phase of being. That part of the challenge of that next phase of being is to have the faith that God is still with you, but that you don't necessarily get to reap the benefits of that at all times. And instead of having God hovering above in a cloud that you can actually see with your eyes,
or burst of fire.
What do you say? Or a fury of fire, exactly, like these real tangible things, that instead you have to create a society in which the presence of God is infused into its very being. How do you explain that to someone, right? Of course it was daunting. Go ahead, Pamela.
So one of the things that I just had a question, I guess, and I'm wondering, if you want to consider this transverse like a colonialization. Sorry, my words were not coming quickly. But like a colonialization, I think you have to ask, is it colonialization the way the British colonized America or the way the Spaniards did? Because British came in, killed everybody, right? They would put smallpox blankets into communities and kill everybody off, but the Spaniards assimilated, which is why we have so many Spanish-speaking people and still the native populations, and there was a lot more assimilation. So my question is, were they going in to create a world that could be assimilated, where it's going to be more inclusive and you could, people could be free to be part of it? Because I'm also wondering, like, when we talk about land back then and how they perceived land, was it ownership or was it just all God's land and there was room for everybody? Because populations were particularly smaller, I assume. So it's not like we're butting up against each other, with the borders and, right now we have all these like border things, right?
Yeah.
But so there's a question underneath all of this, which is, what was sort of the general, are we assimilating? Are we pushing somebody out of their space? Are we making room for each other? Is it all God? Is the perception among everyone generally, like in the natives, like you can't own land, the earth owns the land, that God owns the land, whatever you want to say. So that's my sort of general, in there's a question somewhere.
Sure. I think just to kind of break that up, I think that if you just read the simple text, it's not so clear, right? It just go in, take the land, the inhabitants will be yours. Like, it's not clear if it's go in and destroy what they have, or if it's go in and make a place for yourself, right? Carve out a place for you and your people that you can worship your God, you can create the society that you want, and they can do their thing on the side. Because a lot of the tribes, it wasn't the same God. They were still in the phases of like, let's worship the sun, let's worship the moon, let's worship the water. I think, and there's an interesting, I'm trying to find it in this Torah portion, but spattered within the narrative of this Torah portion, you get these random laws. And one of the laws, and I'm going to try to find the exact word, has to do with how you treat other people in the land, that I think reveals a little bit more than what the text says. Merle, I'm going to let you talk while I find this.
I think it has to be, or had to have been, extremely confusing to these people to get these rules and laws from basically a cloud through another person who's issuing orders and getting fed up with them, the whole gamut here. It has to be very confusing to them to accept what they're being told as they enter this new land. And how do you know if I can pick that fruit? Even though you're telling me, even though it's Moses telling me through supposedly God in this class, and it's not that I don't believe in God, it's where is God in all this? I mean, God's a cloud, God's a bush, whatever. But how do you, it's got to be hard to accept all this, and it's got to be very confusing.
Of course. Okay, so here's the line, and this is for anyone who wants to join in. So this is chapter 15, and this is verse 14. And this is after it goes into, we go from the narrative of like what happened with the spies, and all of a sudden we go into like these rules about offering, which Torah scholars debate whether or not this comes from a different source. This is more of like the priestly edition, because it gets just into the halakha and the laws regarding sacrifice. And so in verse 14, it says, and when throughout the ages, a stranger who has taken up residence with you, or one who lives among you, would present an offering by fire of pleasing odor to God as you do, so shall it be done. The rest of the congregation, there shall be one law for you and for the resident stranger. It shall be a law for all time throughout the ages. You and the stranger shall be alike before God. The same ritual and the same rule shall apply to you and to the stranger who resides among you. So clearly we're not meant to go and kill everyone, because it's fully acknowledging that there are strangers that live among us.
But the strangers have to adopt our
But the
customs.
strangers, I think it's pretty clear that
we don't go and adopt the strangers' ways of sacrificing or their religions.
I think the challenge that was thrown to the Jewish people, to the Israelites, is to be a light unto the nation, to be a model for how society should be arranged, that have this idea of divinity, not just as this like separate thing that you worship, but the idea of divinity. And even in the laws that we read in Mishpatim, the way that we're supposed to take care of one another, the way that we owe something to other people, that the idea was that this kind of society and this new way of thinking, not just of the individual, but of the communal, is what was meant to spread.
We hope so.
Yes.
That is what we hope. I think that is how us on June 16th in 2023 can hope to interpret it. I'm sure there are people along the ages who did not interpret it that way. And
I mean, if you go to lots of places in the world right now, you see lots of people with lots of weapons,
Yeah.
trying to convince each other of often their own God. I
Yeah.
mean, it is. I mean, it's nice that there's a resolution here, but it would be good if it were more, it somehow was more general.
Yeah. No, I agree. And there's interesting things, as I mentioned, the Haftarah for this Torah portion is the book of Joshua, which goes into more detail about basically when Joshua was the leader. This is many, many years later, right? That he sent spies of his own into the land to kind of do a recon mission. And they take shelter with Rahab, an innkeeper, and the innkeeper goes, "Oh, I know you guys. When you first arrived outside of our cities, we were petrified. We'd heard all about your God." Like, it flips the narrative on its head of we were scared of them, you were scared of us. And it gives us kind of like the side part of the episode of what was actually happening. And also in the book of Joshua, while it talks about a lot of conquest, one of the big one, right? The Battle of Jericho. The idea with that is that all they had to do was stand outside the walled gates and blow their shofars as loud as possible, and the walls crumbled down, right? No bloodshed. Anybody else?
It's good we got those weaponized shofars.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
Cantor, yeah, I just was thinking of your comment a couple of sentences ago about this heavy lift put on these Israelites to be this sort of beacon of hope, or this light of education and the study of the Torah for all of humankind. And these are people that just came out of slavery. They were slaves not that long ago.
Yeah.
And that is going to mess with your head anyway, to be a slave. And then they got this other heavy lift. It's a lot of burden. I mean, I welcome it as a Jew, but it's a big lift.
It's a huge burden. So it's no shock that they were either a fear of failure, because that's an incredible amount of pressure to put on people who literally, as of like a couple of weeks ago, if that, had never done anything for themselves or thought about.
They're told what to do. Yeah.
They're told what to do at every single
3
moment.
square meals and told what to do, when to show up for work,
And I almost, the way we talked about it, this kind of world of traveling in the desert, they're kind of like the next step of what that is. And it kind of goes back to that weaning model. They're still told what to do. Moses still tells them what to do. Manna is going to fall. You can only get it for a certain number of days. You're going to have to get a double portion on this day, right? It's like step 2 of we're going to wean you away from the way that you were. But then this next step is like, oh, wait, but you're going to have to do it all by yourself. I'll still be here. God, I will still be here. But you're going to have to go into the land. You're going to have to, farm it. You're going to have to create your own homes. You're going to have to create a system of like a judiciary system in which we're all accountable to each other. Everything that we've been doing out here in this tent of meeting that God and Moses has been telling us to do. Now you have the pressure to go and do it yourselves.
and be a beacon of enlightenment for all of humanity.
And make sure that your neighbors are doing this too.
And have threads coming out of your clothing.
I'm so glad you went there. Okay. So we have all this narrative, we go into laws, and then I had a Torah teacher one time who said, pay attention to the very beginnings and the very ends of each Parsha, because it really even though it always seems disconnected, it's always connected in some way, shape, or form. So at the very end of the Parsha, we have the commandment to wear tzitzit, to wear the fringe garments. Vayomer Adonai Moshe lemor, the Eternal One said to Moses as follows: speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringes at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all of the commandments of the Eternal and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge. Thus you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I, the Eternal, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, the Eternal, your God. So we have the commandment to not, as we understand it in our, progressive reform, the talit with the nice fringes, the idea that on the garment that you wear every single day, that you have these fringes that hang off with the one strand of blue, the patil techelet, which the rabbis say was meant to remind us of the blueness of the sky, that, where the presence of God had hovered for them in the desert. And this is my own interpretation, and I'll be interested to see what you think of. And this is if we're going around with my kind of idea of the weaning of the Israelites away from the presence of God at all times. This is like their, the little blanket that you take with you to college, right? The reminder of home, the reminder that I'm always with you. You may not always be able to see me. I may not be giving you manna from the sky and water from the earth and telling you everything to do at every single moment of every day, but I'm always here. It's like that little security blanket. Yeah, Penina.
Okay, I am very curious to know, was ever a census to show how many people in the whole world believe in monotheism and how many not?
Was there ever a census?
And census, like counting, like people counting.
I don't know. The census that they do is often broken into.
If they ever found out today, how many people are believe in the world, believe in monotheism and how many not?
Well, they
Was
have.
Well, I think it's when you break it
there-
down by the religions, by the Abrahamic faiths, by, Christianity.
I'm
Islam.
talking monotheism, period.
But those are
Because those are offshoots.
religions
The
that are
rest of them are
based
offshoots of that. What?
well,
But
Hindu-
those are the idea of
Hindu-
those Abrahamic faiths are one God.
yeah, but
Yes.
because, and
Yes. Well,
Christianity,
monotheism
Judaism,
started
and
there.
Islam are one
Because
God.
Go ahead, Eric.
Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are one.
I know that,
Explicitly
but did we ever
monotheistic.
come to see how
China-
many people in the world?
China is not explicitly
Okay.
monotheistic.
I don't know. I don't know
India
of
is
any
not.
census.
India
Okay.
is not. Those are two.
Okay,
very
so
large
let's,
ones. And there
okay,
are lots of indigenous people around the world
right,
that are not.
right,
So
right.
you may have. I mean, it's a split.
Right, okay. So, but when we say we, I like to say that I like to say I. When we say we believe, we do, I always look at that how I feel about this whole thing before I generalize what's supposed to happen in the world.
Yeah.
And if you look at societies, how many killed to make other people believe like them, like the Inquisition or the British going with the flags for the whatever you call it, that war that they did also.
Yeah, there was a lot of death in the name of
At
religion.
the time, yeah. And
in
now
other
here you're
things like
looking
opium
at
wars and
what?
There's lots of wars about
Right, and it was people
substances,
forcing the
sugar and
religion.
cocaine and
Yeah, but the whole idea
tobacco.
of the monotheism was to avoid these wars, to avoid all these different tribes that believed in all kind of idols. They were fighting each other and sacrificing people to the idols. I think the whole idea of the monotheism and the laws were to change the way people treat each other or think of each other.
Well, that was one of the big selling points for Islam when it came out, but then it wound
Well,
up
it's
being
what you do with it.
killing a
That's
lot
what
of
I'm
people.
trying to tell you. It's what you do with it.
Yes.
So when we say we, there is no really we here. There is what everybody
It's
feels.
it's how each individual person
Exactly.
interprets.
Maybe
And
God should have found a better species to reveal the stuff to.
Okay, I'm going to give you again another example, and with this, I'm not going to talk anymore. When we brought the Falashis out of the land that they were there, Ethiopia, the word Falashi means stranger. So they lived all their lives, and they were strangers. So Israel brought them to Israel, and what you do with them, you have to teach them how to use the bathroom, how to literally, they didn't know how to flush. They came in barefoot. So eventually they were within the society till this what you say, got used to the conditions of their land. They built the whole city in the desert for them, Beersheba, in the desert. Okay, you have to bring water, you have to bring everything there. And the desert is a desert, and they build a city for them. So what I'm trying to tell you is there is other people living there. There is other communities. It's the same thing in United States, but you learn how to live. There is a 10 Commandments, and the whole world hopefully follows that. It tells you how to be civilized and how to live with other people. There was never a question of throwing anybody out. You learn to live with other people. That's it. That's how it works all over the world. I think so. And if you don't want to do that, and you start looking for the minuses instead of the pluses, then we cannot say we. It's I and another person and another person. And those are the ones who are making the we that's either a negative or a positive. That's it. And the judicial system in the world today, the civilized world, is built on the 10 Commandments. Pay attention to this.
But I
The
think that
judicial
to go
system
back
is
to
built on
our,
the 10 Commandments.
yeah, but to
That's
go
why
back
they call
to our
it judicia. Your judicia comes from the word.
Panina, we got someone else. David, go ahead.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
I think that if we go back to try to, string that all together, that with their failure to see the possibilities,
Exactly.
that it was fear of failure or fear of success, or that they were just a little bit too comfortable. What they were being asked to do was a monumental task. That it wasn't just, it was leave the mentality that you've been in. It's go and create a new society, a society in which other people will feel inclined to follow those same rules and to start to model their society after this one. Like, no wonder they were paralyzed with fear. But I think that the tzitzit and the commandment for that at the end, it's kind of this idea of like, we can't just live in this like sheltered presence. We can't just like live and study Torah all day and just feel really close to God. That we're meant to be, and we're not going to talk about the illustrious we, but that I, as a Jew, like I'm meant to live out there in the nitty gritty. That I'm meant to be out there and figure out ways to toil the land and deal with things like war and famine and all of the crazy mishigas of the world. But that what my challenge is that if I can't have God's presence hovering above me at all time, how do I find a way to internalize that presence of God in the way that I interact with others, in the ways that I deal with the world around me?
I mean, don't the Hasidim just sort of turn around out of that, and they just you go to the yeshiva for 12 hours a day. You don't study anything except.
I think they should go to the army. Like
and this was
else.
actually why what I brought up by the Lubavitcher Rebbe was so like mind blowing for a man of his stature and for being the representative of the Hasidic dynasty, is he was like, this is a warning for the Jewish people. Like, we are not meant to stay within ourselves. We are not meant to stay clustered, studying Torah all day, arguing whether or not this Rebbe was right or this Rebbe was right. Our challenge is to live out there in the real world and to try to bring that presence of God into the real world.
You're here.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
We'll see. Yeah. Okay.
I agree.
It's a heavy lift.
It's a very heavy lift, and no wonder they were scared. I would be scared too. I'd be scared of failure. I'd be scared of success, all the things.
Well,
But
also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it also ties into the endless persecution. Here you're trying to impose thoughts, feelings, ways of life, law, whatever on others, which is a little bit more heady to kind of understand why and how to live a certain way, a good way, make good choices. Other people just want to be kind of told what to do or look up, answers any question in a book or something. So, it leads to negativity, negative feelings when you're telling people the right way to live. Our way is better. It's right.
The history of the diaspora.
Exactly. I mean, it's connected, obviously.
I'd,
Go ahead.
I'd be a,
Got something. Wait, I got a finger up. David, we got something.
Yeah, this really interesting note in Robert Alter in the book of Joshua. When Joshua leads the Israelites into the promised land and is instructed to put everything under the ban. Everything. Not even a goat survives. And in fact, in short order, the enemies disappear. Now, archaeology shows that there were no wars. There's no proof that there were any fighting ever. So all of the stuff that we take as the Joshua battles, none of it happened if archaeology is anything to go by. What happened? Intermarriage, merging. The people that were there disappeared. They became us.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that in some way, peace won. Forget the story. What really happened? A powerful culture drew a bunch of other people into it and prevailed, succeeded peacefully.
And keep in mind of why the story needs to be the story is because other people read the story and then get ideas of what your great and powerful nation is capable of doing. And they knock down walls with their shofar and they conquered through the land. Meanwhile, you're absolutely right that it was a much slower process of, I don't know if it's assimilation. It's more of like the other nations assimilated into us because we don't read about what happened to the Canaanites or the Hittites or the Jebusites but we do read about what happened to the Jewish people. And it was kind of this slow roll of like, hey, let me show you our way of life, right? Welcome. The laws that apply to me are the same laws that apply to you, and you're going to be treated equally under our God. And welcome, take a look around.
So it's a very successful move into the promised land. And the story is a bit of a mislead, however compelling it may be. It's a mislead.
What I was thinking is why, in addition to the agony and the worry about failure, why isn't there more sort of LeBron James strutting and pumping the chest about, hey, we got it, we're doing it, look at us.
I think that's why Joshua and Caleb really stood out, because I don't remember who it's in some book, but Brene Brown uses it a lot. But that a real leader builds up the confidence of all of those around them. That's what leadership is about. It's making other people feel like, yeah, I can do this. It's not just about being the best.
No, absolutely. Yes.
It's more like Djokovic. It's more like Joker.
There you go.
oops, sorry. Isn't a lot of this, when I think about it now, a lot of this confidence building and bringing people into the fold, isn't this a lot about conversion? That we're teaching people how to be part of this community and what this community means. And hopefully, if they choose to convert, what it will mean to them when they convert and how. I mean, you can't know how to do all this stuff without some guidance. And our teachers, our clergy, are for the most part our teachers, but they had to learn it from someone else a long time ago.
But the thing is that Judaism is the least converting religion around, just about. I mean, there's obstacles, there's all sorts of stuff that comes up. Even
we're not a proselytizing.
We don't, right.
We don't go out and seek. We bring people in who want to be a
if
part
somebody
of it.
if somebody comes in and they can battle and sit down and study, maybe we'll let them in, but it's a complicated thing.
But I think that the word that you use, I think that it was more of converting those around them, that there's a different way of doing life. It's an ideological change, an example of what to be. Because if you think about it, like the Israelites had their own kind of conversion moment, right? As they were standing around Mount Sinai, Na'aseh v'nishma, like, fine, we're just going to do this and then we'll understand. But like, we were just a bunch of slaves and we have no idea what we're doing. And, we just lived life as people told us. And now we're going to have to convert ourselves into a new ideology, that we're accountable to one another, that we have to build this society, that like we have agency to do that. Okay, we have to stop there. But thank you guys. This was really fun.
Thank you. This was
Bravo.
great.
Cantor, what
You did it.
insightful commentary.
This was fabulous.
Do
Thank
it
you.
again.
Thank you.
Lisa.
I
Do it
look
again.
forward to being back with you guys again someday soon. This was
Oh,
fun.
we hope
Me
so.
too.
We
Okay.
hope
This was
so, for
great.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Bye.
shalom,
Shabbat
everybody.
shalom, everyone.
Bye.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Bye.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye.
Shabbat shalom.